It's like a real-life Miami Vice. Cocaine Cowboys, the Kings of Miami is a new Netflix documentary series that takes a look at two of South Florida's biggest celebrities and their most infamous drug kingpins. Cocaine Cowboys, the Kings of Miami is a 6-part saga on the South Florida traffickers indicted in one of the largest drug cases in U.S. history. Alleged to be the chief U.S. distributors for two of Colombia's biggest cartels, Cuban exiles Willy Falcon and Sal Magluta were accused of smuggling over 75 tons of cocaine into the U.S. in the 1980s. So if you're interested in hearing about a new munchie I found, stick around to the end of this video. So I didn't know about this case at all before watching the documentary. The show does a really good job of setting up the players and the events. The majority of the first 2 episodes build out who Sal and Willy were. Or are. We see them as race boat champions and celebrities and have a massive amount of interview footage from people that were involved with them during this time. Now, I was worried that the documentary was going to end up glorifying their actions because it certainly felt like the narrative was building them up as heroes or at least people to look up to rather than the powerful drug smugglers they ended up being. Like most documentaries, there is interview footage from friends, family, employees, journalists, lawyers, prosecutors, and law enforcement. There's also a good amount of news footage that's incorporated in this to help tell the story. These interviews are pretty in-depth and they're all very engaging, and some are just downright funny because of what the interviewees say. They don't really pull punches, and several times they made me laugh out loud. Now, the story is told chronologically in the overall sense, but it bounces back and forth on the timeline quite a bit. That doesn't make it hard to understand or follow, but you need to be watching so that you don't miss when a year or a decade changes. The documentary puts the timeline right on the screen for us as we travel back and forth so we can follow along visually. Now, because I wasn't acquainted with this case, I found it really intriguing. It was impressive in one sense on what they were able to accomplish and how they were able to avoid trouble for just so long. And for a large portion of their enterprise, at least in how it's portrayed in this documentary, they were non-violent, which I think is even more impressive. The production quality of this documentary is very well done. The filmmakers have acquired a vast amount of archive footage and interviews, and then are able to piece it together with the interviews they conduct, and it tells a very compelling and engaging story. Now, as much as I like the way that this was put together, the series is long, and too long, I think. The thing that I love about this documentary is also the very thing that makes it too long. We have so many interviews with those involved that are telling their story, but it ends up being like that one friend of yours who has to give every single detail, whether it's interesting or not, so that the story takes forever to be told. And that's what happens here. So much detail comes from the interviews, but not all of it really needs to be told. Conversations and retellings of events can, and then should be, greatly trimmed in this to be concise. People are recounting everything in excruciating detail. Like one person talks about how they were being called out of a home by the FBI and they were worried about their dogs being shot, and then later tells us that their dogs died several years later. Yeah, that's sad, but how relevant is it really to the story of Sal and Willy? It's not. This documentary needed another pass in the editing to shore up the narrative and get it more concise and then relevant. What we have is a series with 6 episodes that are each between 40 and 50 minutes long. And while I don't want to lose the context of all the events, I don't think we need it told in the level of detail that we get. I do like how so many aspects, though, are captured in this. We learn about how they smuggled their drugs, how they operated their business. We get to see different levels within their organization, and we get to see how well connected they really were. We learn about their money laundering, their ledgers and payoffs, but also we get to see levels of corruption that you'd only think existed in movies. All in all, this is a documentary series worth watching if you enjoy true crime. While I do think it's too long and some of those interviews should have been trimmed to just stick to the pertinent portions, I did learn a ton about these high-profile criminals that I had previously never heard of. The storytelling is entertaining and it's engaging, and the large mix of interview subjects provides a lot of colorful descriptions of everything that just took place with Sal and Willy. There's no sex, there might be very slight nudity, there's a ton of profanity and some very violent and gory imagery. I highly recommend checking out Cocaine Cowboys, the Kings of Miami on Netflix. Okay, so I found this new munchie, at least it's new to me. It's a Krispy Kreme mini cruller. Now, if you're familiar with crullers that you can get at the donut shop, these are different. And while a normal cruller, is airy and fluffy, it's almost like a cream puff, these are more cakey. Now I went with the original glazed version, but they also have blueberry and key lime. And those didn't really sound appealing to me. Oops, as I lose my box. But maybe I'm gonna try them in the future. Probably not though. It comes with about 10 crullers in the box, and because these are soft and cakey, you can't manhandle them. You need to be gentle as you grab one and shove the whole thing in your mouth. If you're too rough with them, they're gonna break in half and then you're fumbling around to not lose part of the sugary goodness. I can eat 2 to 3 at a time and then the sugar gets to be too much. If I have some coffee or water nearby, that helps cut the sweetness considerably. I like them because not only are they tasty, soft, and they're easy to eat, they're also relatively inexpensive. I think I paid like $4 for the box, which is way cheaper than hitting up my local donut shop. Now I got mine at Walmart, but I'm guessing that you can probably get them at many different stores. Now, just to be transparent, I'm not sponsored or being paid by Krispy Kreme to talk about these. I saw them on the shelf, they looked appetizing, I decided to give them a try. Now, Krispy Kreme though, if you're watching, I'm certainly down to discuss a sponsorship, just saying. So I really like these mini crullers and I'm certainly gonna be buying more, at least of the original glazed. I just need to not always buy them so I don't continue to increase the roundness that I got going on here. Anyway, thanks for sticking around. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.